Hello and welcome, everyone, to another episode of Bridge the Gap, the podcast where we dive deep, ask why, and occasionally, why not? I'm your host, Nikki Steinhauer, and today we're going to be cracking open one of humanity's oldest and juiciest debates: science versus spirituality. Now, before you roll your eyes or grab that sage stick or your calculator, stick around because today we're not picking sides. We're going to explore the similarities, the differences, and even the weird overlaps between science and spirituality. Along the way, we're going to talk about the energy, the philosophy of science, and why, in a very real sense, everything is possible, at least until you look at it. So grab your favorite beverage, maybe a notepad, and let's get started. So, what do we mean by science and spirituality? Let's start off with some definitions. Science is the methodical pursuit of knowledge about the universe. It uses observation, experimentation, and logic. Think of it as the world's most persistent detective, always looking for clues and asking how, but it's never quite satisfied. Spirituality, on the other hand, is about meaning, connection, and understanding our place in the universe. It asks why and what for instead of just how. It can involve religion, but it doesn't have to. It's more about personal experience, intuition, and that deep sense that we are all connected, that there's something more, and creating that connection with that more, whatever the word you call it. It could be God, universe, source, whatever it is that you resonate with. Both are ways of exploring reality. So think of science as a magnifying glass and spirituality as that wide-angled lens. Believe it or not, science was born out of spirituality. So let's go ahead and take a quick time machine ride back into the day, thinking of ancient Greece, India, Egypt. People wanted to understand the world. We have always had that inner connection and inner desire to know how the world works, how basically anything works in this world. And so they had questions like, why does the sun rise? What happens after we die? Why do cats always knock things over? Maybe not that last one, but we never know. Spirituality provided the first answers, the stories, the myths, the gods, and the rituals. It gave people meaning and that comfort. But then curiosity kind of kicked in, and some people started to ask, how can we explain this without invoking Zeus or Ra? They started observing, experimenting, and voila, science was born. So science is kind of like the spirituality's rebellious teenager in a sense. They're kind of like, leave me alone. I'm not part of this family. I'll figure it all out by myself. Thanks. So they kind of separated a little bit and kind of took on its own name and persona. But let's go ahead and break down spirituality from the cosmos to the cell into its components. And let's just see how science comes in to analyze each one. We will take a look at the cosmos, life and consciousness, the human body, and our mind and emotions. So let's go ahead and first take a look at the cosmos, the big picture of spirituality. Spiritually, the universe is a vast interconnected whole. It is the one, the alpha, the omega, the beginning and the end. It is everything intertwined. Scientifically, we enter physics, the study of matter, energy, space, and time. Physics tries to decode the rules that govern the universe, like gravity and electromagnetism. For example, the idea that we are all one in spirituality is echoed through quantum physics, where particles are entangled and they can influence each other across space. So it doesn't matter where they are, they can still be entangled and interact. Now, when it comes to life and consciousness, consciousness is one of the most profound puzzles facing both science and spirituality. It's that inner spark, the you behind your thoughts, your feelings, and experiences. But what exactly is it, and why is it so mysterious? Spiritually, life is sacred, consciousness is a mystery, and we can all tap into the universal field of consciousness to gain information, to gain wisdom. Many spiritual traditions treat consciousness as very sacred, the very essence of life. Some philosophies see it as a fragment of the universal awareness, a spark of the divine or the soul itself. Eastern traditions like Hinduism and Buddhism, they speak of Atman and Buddha, nature. It's a consciousness that is timeless and boundless. But the ability to feel, love, learn, and wonder, it's always kind of been a miracle, no matter how you look at it. So, scientifically, here comes biology, which is the study of living things from the small bacteria to the enormous blue whales. And we have neuroscience, which looks at the brain and consciousness. So, for biologists and neuroscientists, consciousness is a phenomenon that emerges from activity of the brain. Despite decades of research, no one knows exactly how billions and billions of neurons are firing electrical signals and how they produce the sensation of being. And this is what is called the hard problem of consciousness. But even without spiritual beliefs, many scientists are awed by the complexity and the improbability of life. The sheer number of perfectly timed events that led to conscious life on Earth, it boggles the mind of so many people trying to find the truth, trying to find that evidence, those hard facts. Spirituality kind of asks, what is the soul? While science asks, what is consciousness? But both sides, honestly, if I'm being 100% honest, they're both still a little bit stumped about how to move forward with it because spirituality can't really prove it. And science, honestly, both of them, they cannot prove it 100%, right? Let's take a look at the human body real quick. When it comes to the human body, the body is a temple or a vessel for the soul in the eyes of spirituality. Scientifically, anatomy and physiology break the body down into smaller portions, such as the organs, the cells, the molecules, and DNA. But they both are representing the same thing, the same aspects. An example of this could be a yoga practitioner might say, breathe in positive energy. And a scientist would say, oxygen fuels cellular respiration. But both are agreeing that breathing is good for you. And finally, when it comes to our mind and our emotions, spiritualists, they kind of explore meditation, mindfulness, and prayer, while psychology and psychiatry study the mind, emotions, and behavior. And an example of this is that spirituality kind of says, be here in the now moment, in the present. While science has proven that mindfulness reduces stress and even changes your brain and thought processes. So you can clearly see how closely intertwined science and spirituality is. In my personal opinion, they are one and the same. Just as your pinky finger is a part of your whole entire body. It may have its own function, maybe have a slightly different makeup or buildup, but it is all a part of your whole body, what makes you you. And don't be coming at me saying, what if I don't have a pinky finger? That just means that you haven't observed it, so it's not in your reality. So, there is still the potential to have a pinky finger, but you haven't observed it in your reality, okay? You haven't mustered up enough energetic potential for it. And speaking of energy, what the heck is energy? You may have heard the term energy healer or have been told to protect your energy, but what exactly is energy? Because both science and spirituality are obsessed with it. Scientifically, energy is the ability to do work. It comes in many forms, kinetic, thermal, chemical, whether it's moving a car, lighting a light bulb, or just powering your brain cells. An example of this scientifically is when you eat an apple, your body converts the apple's stored chemical energy into movement, thought, and heat. So energy is constantly changing forms, but it never disappears. Spirituality, energy is life force. It's chi, spirit, vibes. And across the world, cultures have described a life force that animates all living things. So in China, we have qi, the life energy that flows through the different meridians in the body that are central to practices like acupuncture and tai chi. While in India, we have prana, the vital force believed to flow through the breath and energy centers, those chakras, and they're described in yoga and Ayurveda. In Polynesia cultures, they have mana. It is the spiritual energy or power present in people, objects, and even the land. In the West, we kind of call it spirit or vibes, the vibe or the aura. It's something that someone gives off, something that is described as good or bad energy. But the common thread here is that everywhere, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, people sense that there's something animating and connecting life, even if it's called by 100 different names. And here's the wild part. Energy can never be created or destroyed. This is the first law of thermodynamics. Energy can only change form. So if your energy can never be destroyed and new energy can never be created, it may have you thinking into the concept of reincarnation. And reincarnation is the idea that after physical death, consciousness or your soul is reborn into a new body. This belief is central in Hinduism, Buddhism, and in many other traditions. From a spiritual perspective, reincarnation is seen as the soul's energy transforming, never being destroyed. It's echoing the scientific law that energy can't be created or destroyed, only changed. Just as energy is always in flux, reincarnation suggests that our essence continues, transforming and taking on new forms, always with the potential for new experiences. So let's think about a candle. I'll give you guys a quick little simple example. Think about a candle. You go ahead and you light the candle. The wax, which is the chemical energy, it turns into heat and light. The energy, it didn't disappear. It just kind of sort of changed costumes like an actor in a play. So in a way, science and spirituality, they both agree that energy in some kind of form is eternal. So if energy is eternal and it can change and transform, then what are the options that we have for it to transform into? And here's where it gets just a little bit trippy. There is a potential for everything. So let's take a look at wave function and possibility. Scientifically speaking, specifically quantum physics, particles exist in a state of potential. They could be here, they could be there, or both, until someone observes them. And this is called the collapse of the wave function. And in the spiritual realm, everything is possible. Reality is shaped by intention, observation, and consciousness. So if we think about Schrodinger's cat, until you open the box, that cat is both alive and dead. Or until you check your grades at school, You've both passed and failed your exam. Okay, maybe that one's not as comforting, but you kind of get the idea. There is a potential for both of those outcomes until it is observed, until you observe it. Then you solidify it into your reality. We can even see this if we take a psychological perspective. Our expectations and our beliefs, they shape what we notice and how we act. There's even a scientific term called confirmation bias. Through confirmation bias, we find what we're looking for. So, confirmation bias is just a psychological phenomenon where we tend to notice, remember, and even give more weight to information that confirms our existing beliefs and our existing expectations. A couple examples of this would just be if you believe that the world is a dangerous place, then you're going to notice, news stories about crime and ignore the stories about, kindness and people helping each other. And if you think that you're unlucky, you're going to remember all of the times that things went wrong and you forget all of your lucky breaks or when things were good. So our beliefs and our expectations, they kind of act like filters on our reality. We see what we expect to see, which can create a feedback loop of our beliefs shape our perceptions and our perceptions reinforce our beliefs. Through a scientific aspect, scientists try to minimize confirmation bias with double-blind studies, peer reviews, and skepticism. So that happens on a scientific level. But when it comes to spirituality, many spiritual traditions encourage practices like meditation or self-inquiry to help people see beyond their biases and recognize these deeper truths, seeing things from the bigger picture, that bird's eye view, from a vantage point where you can see all sides of the story and not just through your own lens. So, all in all, until something is observed, it remains pure potential. And this is why, in theory, anything is possible. So let's go ahead and wrap up the head-to-head here. And this is kind of where the Venn diagram gets a little funky, okay? So the similarities between science and spirituality are that they both seek to explain reality. They both use observation. In science, it's measurement. In spirituality, it's experience. But both can inspire awe and wonder and seeking the truth. And a few differences between science and spirituality are that science demands evidence, repeatability, and skepticism, while spirituality values personal experience, intuition, your inner knowing. And science is about understanding the how, while spirituality is all about the why. But here's the kicker here, okay? Both need each other. Science without meaning, it's kind of just cold. While spirituality without inquiry can get, honestly, for lack of better terms, a little airy-fairy sometimes. So utilizing both in a holistic way, instead of separating them, we can begin to see the full story as we seek for truth. The big truths and the small ones. They are all on the same energy spectrum, from big to small. You might have heard that science is the smallest form of energy, while spirituality is the largest. But what exactly does that mean? It just means that science looks at the individual bricks, the atoms, the molecules, and the particles, while spirituality considers the whole entire building. It's the universe, it's consciousness, it's the big picture. So, to give you a quick analogy of this, you can see this as science being the pixel and spirituality being the whole image, that bigger picture. But why should we even care? And honestly, this topic will probably blow up your group chat because it's all connected. Your thoughts, your body, the universe, even your favorite meme, it is all connected. If you can understand both sides, science and spirituality, it will make you wiser. It will help you make better decisions on your life path because you can see the bigger picture as well as how each component affects the whole. You can even become more funny and probably even better at trivia nights just by knowing that everything is potential. So dream big, experiment, and stay curious. Next time someone says, that's just how it is, you can say, is it though? And just kind of watch everyone's mind get blown. To bring it all together, whether you're a scientist, a spiritual seeker, or even a cat who is both dead and alive, just remember that science and spirituality are both tools for exploring the great mystery. Energy is eternal. It changes form. Everything is potential until you make it real and you observe it. Laugh, ask questions, and never stop learning and wondering. That is our show for today. If you've enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend, leave us a review, leave a comment, or even just go ahead and shout your favorite insight into the void. Who knows? It might echo back. So next week, we're just going to go ahead and dive into what the heck are chakras and see how you can utilize them to help heal your life. So be sure to like, follow, subscribe, and do all of the things so that you don't miss an episode. New episodes are released every Monday, and I am Nikki Steinhauer, reminding you that the universe is just a little weird, and so are we. So I will see you next time on Bridge the Gap.